We're talking Detroit Tigers. We're talking American League Central. We're talking Jim Harbaugh on today's episode of Locked On Twins with Chris Castellani. Coming up next.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Minnesota Twins podcast. Today is Wednesday, February 2nd. I'm your gracious host, Nash Walker. I want to thank you for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms. Chris Castellani is with us of Barstool Sports. I'm sure like day one Locked On listeners remember that Chris and I had a crossover the day after COVID broke in the United States of America. I think that was the last time. We might have had one in between. But Chris,
I think we had one in between, but I do remember it was, we had the build-up week was all set and everything was recorded. So we released all these podcasts when we knew everything was about to go to crap. It was a very awkward position to be in at the time, but we found our way back, and I'm happy to be on today.
Yeah, thank you for coming, Chris. For those who don't know, Chris was the host of Locked On Tigers, did an amazing job. It's what's his name again over at Locked On Tigers?
Scott Bentley, who's doing a bang-up job as well. Yeah.
Yep, he's great. We miss Chris, but Chris has had just a jam-packed year since we last spoke. Chris, you want to talk a little bit about your career path and where it's taken you?
It's been a trip, dude. I mean, it's been very wild. It's been humbling. It's been rewarding. It's been fun. But with that comes a tremendous amount of pressure, as well. I mean, as much as I enjoyed doing Locked On and as much as I enjoyed the videos that I made at the time, I mean, the hobby has become a career now. And with that comes, a responsibility of trying to be the best you can be and being careful with what you say and trying to do what's best for yourself and your audience. But it's been really, really insane. The people at Barstool have been tremendous to me. The Stoolies have been awesome. And the people who were there from the beginning have continued to stay, and I want that to be a part of my brand forever, is that this started, doing the podcasts in the basement and doing the videos and watching what were some really, really terrible Tigers teams for a long time. And now we've built our way back to I'm at Barstool now, and it's incredibly satisfying for sure.
Chris is covering Michigan basketball. Of course, Tigers. A little bit of Lions.
Oh, very sparingly. I mean, honestly, the most Lions stuff I've covered has now been what's going on with Stafford, because people in Detroit are just losing it. And I'm happy for him too. I'm happy for him too. I think it's great. I think that anytime you play for what is historically the worst organization in the history of sports, and you find your way out, and you find your way to a Super Bowl, I think that's awesome. And I've had to write about it because, I mean, it's changed. In a lot of ways, it's changed my perception of him to a certain extent, because you wondered in all those years in Detroit, it's okay, how much of it was on him? Was there any part of it that was on him? And now for him to be to be succeeding and to be satisfied the way he's been, I think it's wonderful. I think it's been truly remarkable, and that's provided me with a fair amount of content, and I wrote a few blogs that got some traction. But covering Lions a little bit, a lot of Michigan stuff, which I think we're going to talk about here in a second. But one thing that has been excellent about Barstool is they've given me a ton of creative freedom to write about what I love and to write about what I know, and they've given me that opportunity. It's been great.
You're doing a great job. I will say I've been watching and following a lot of Michigan basketball. I love Juwan Howard. Disappointing year, but good win last night, and watched him play Michigan State. That was fun. Good first half. Hunter Dickinson is good. But for those who don't know, Chris has post-game videos. Are you going to do Tigers post-games this summer?
Oh, yeah. No, that will. Oh, yeah. I don't know when. Somebody asked me about this a while ago. When would the day come where that ceases to exist? And I mean, retirement. I don't see the day ever coming where it's just and I want to work at Barstool forever, but I don't see the day ever coming where it's I can't do these. I mean, that is I got to where I'm at because of those. So those will not be going away anytime soon.
I remember when I first came across Chris was the 2019 season. And we're going to
Mhm.
talk Tigers today, and we're going to talk, as you mentioned, Michigan football. But the 2019 season was maybe one of the worst you've probably ever seen. I think you've
I would
called the
say so.
Tigers. Yeah, I think you called the Tigers offense one of the worst in MLB history
Mhm.
that year. And my buddy, so I texted my buddies today and I said, "Hey, Barstool Chris is coming on, Chris Castellani, my buddy. Do you have any questions for him?" And my buddy AJ sent me this video of a lineup that was being announced at Target Field, and it
Yeah, I
was
saw it yesterday.
yes
Yeah,
of the Tigers lineup at Target Field.
mhm.
Just insane. I was
And you know,
laughing.
it's so weird how much things have changed, like the weird ebbs and flows where like I will maintain forever, like the Tigers dug themselves a massive hole and this rebuild has gone on way longer than it should have. But like that was 3 years ago, that lineup.
Yeah.
And looking at where they're gonna be, or where I project them to be, kind of the 1 through 9, if you include Green and Torkelson in the lineup, which they'll be there, at some point early. The fact that they've gotten a lineup to be like respectable 3 years removed from having the one that the video you're talking about, I think Miggy might have had a day off. There were 0 major league starters on that team.
Yeah.
Like you've had like Victor Reyes is like a 4th, 5th outfielder. But you had Brandon Dixon at first base. Yeah, we're talking like Ronnie Rodriguez, like some Dowell Lugo. Like that was like the dark period of Tigers baseball. So it's weird how they deserve a lot of criticism, the front office does, for digging themselves a massive hole, and yet they do deserve some praise for digging themselves out of the hole that they like put themselves into. It's kind of a weird process that's gone on. But yeah, no, among Tigers Twitter, like even last year, and last year wasn't something amazing. It was 77 wins. Like people would share like those lineups late in September when they had all but given up. And yeah, it was not a fun period for sure.
I think the Tigers are a great example of baseball is not as sticky, and this has been discussed, as we think it is, in terms of you looked at the Tigers in 2019, and I personally said, like, I don't see the Tigers anywhere near 77 wins in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
But
I felt the same way.
yeah, all it takes is a Jamer breakout, Robbie Grossman signing, Jonathan Scope as the team MVP, at least in the first half. The young starters come up and pitch well for the most part. At times, have pitched really well together.
Yeah.
But it comes together so fast. There's a win there. There's 2 wins there. There's 3 wins there. And all of a sudden you're at 77. You're looking forward and you're saying, wow. And I actually said in a survey last week that I think the Tigers could be the best team in the Central in the next 5 years. And it's as quick as that. What's your response to that? Because I know you've been a White Sox guy through and through, at least supported what they've done.
Well, what's weird is I believe the White Sox are far and away the most talented team in the division. I think you essentially have to be crazy to dispute that. I mean, last year they won 95 games, and you look at the amount of games Grandal and Robert and Jimenez missed. I mean, that was a pretty impressive, run they went on. I'm not going to say discouraged, because like I would prefer they be bad because it would be good for the Tigers.
Right.
But I've been, obviously this is the big one. The managerial hire was shocking and remains shocking. And the few people on the inside that I know within the Tigers organization were stunned. I mean, they were banking on AJ's going to get the offer there, and he's going to go to Chicago. Never happened. But even beyond that, like I've been very surprised by either the lack of spending or who they've spent money on. Like you saw,
I agree,
in 2020, and obviously truncated season, but like that team was going to be good like all year. They had a really good lineup. Guys Giolito was pitching great. But I was expecting the big splash, the big, the move that you make to really solidify yourself post, breakout season. And Grandal is excellent. But after that, they haven't really spent big money. And like I would go as far as say like the Tigers offseason right now, not to say that it's anything amazing, but with Baez and Erod and bringing in Barnhart through a trade, like the White Sox are a team that, at least from a front office standpoint, kind of seems like they're twiddling their thumbs a little bit, which is a bit surprising considering the talent that they have. They've done something that to me I would not do, which is put a lot of money into relievers. Now, thus far, it's worked out with Kyle Hendricks, but like, I don't know. I almost get, it won't be this bad because the lineup is great and the front office is more competent, but I almost get like, remember that the Rockies super pen from a few years ago, and they got like Wade Davis and Brian Shaw, and everyone's like, oh man, they're going to be shutting things down at Coors Field. And that was basically a disaster for all three of them. I'm completely on board with the White Sox going forward in terms of their young core, but even the best cores need, talent around them to supplement that roster. And I don't know if they're there yet. So as far as the Tigers potentially in the next 5 years being the best team, look, it's entirely possible. In 5 years, like you just said, in 2019, you were watching thinking, and I was too, saying this team's not going to get to 77 wins in 5 years. And they, in 2, they kind of, put together a team that was relatively respectable. It's very possible. A lot of it depends on health, and even more so with this core because unlike, with the exception of Barrios for the most part, what you guys did with the Twins, you built a lot through position players.
Yeah.
When you're building, I love Torkelson and I love Green, and I think they're going to be complete studs, but the central part of this rebuild has been pitching. Like if those guys' arms fall apart, knock on wood, I don't want it to happen. I think their development thus far has been wonderful. Then you're running into some serious question marks regarding the future of the organization. But I think they're at a point now. They're in a better standing than they've been in a long time. I think the future is brighter than it's been in a long time. But time will tell in regards to how good this team can be.
I think the Twins fans can look at the Tigers in some ways. The Twins are expecting to have probably 6 or 7 starters debut this year. And you can get so fired up. And they're not on the level of Mize or Skubal or even Manning, but you can get yourself fired up and you can start to expect much more than what you should expect for these guys. Casey Mize is one of the best 3 or 5 right-handed prospects in the world a couple of years ago. And he's been good. I thought he had a good season. Ups and downs, right? And that's what happens. And that's just development. It's going to happen. Tarek Skubal is electric. You look at his stuff, purely at his stuff, and you say, this guy could be an ace. And then he gives up a lot of homers. We watched at Target Field, gave up some homers.
Yeah, you guys bombed him like on multiple occasions, I feel
I remember watching him. It's not linear progression. I have to remind myself of that all the time with these guys. It's not linear. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be crazy years. That's why we love the game. It's crazy. Things can happen and it's wild, but I think the Tigers are in a good spot. I agree with you on the Sox. I think they put themselves in I don't want to call it precarious position because I think they're in a good spot, obviously are in a good spot. I think they've missed some opportunities to get better, certainly. Chris covers Michigan football religiously. I felt like I was getting into Michigan football because I was watching your post games about Michigan football. Amazing year. Beat Ohio State, get to the playoff. Georgia beat them up a little bit, but what a year. And now I'm going to put it on the screen for those on YouTube. Jim Harbaugh could be heading to Minnesota. It's not confirmed, but Chris, I want to get your opinion. Do you think it's going to happen?
I believe that at this point, if it doesn't, something very bizarre will have happened with the contract negotiations. By accounts from people that I really trust, and I usually don't like being sources guy because I think you just kind of set yourself up for failure, but people that I know are very reliable who have ins with the program and have had ins with the program for a long time believe that, the report was he left Schembechler Hall a few days ago to take a flight to Minnesota. And he was intent that he probably would not be coming back. At least if he did come back, he would not be the head coach at Michigan anymore. So I believe, I'm not going to say it's at the goal line because it was technically only an interview. But I wrote my piece already. It's up on Barstool, and it was probably a little bit premature, but I do not believe he will be coaching Michigan next year. And it's going to create a very weird legacy. I'll say, this is a Twins podcast and thus a Minnesota podcast. He's a really good football coach. He's a good coach. I believe that he's actually a coach who's probably better suited, weirdly, and this is so rare, better suited for the NFL than he is for college. And one of my friends, Tony Paul, tweeted something that is very true, which is when you are a college football coach, that's a 24/7, 365 day a year job. In the NFL, there is no recruiting. I mean, there's obviously free agency, but most of that, unless you're somebody like Belichick who kind of runs the team, it falls under the front office and management. I think that Harbaugh is now he's in his 60s. He is a guy who has had a tremendous amount of success. I will maintain, if this is the end, I will maintain his tenure at Michigan was a disappointment. I am not somebody who says all is forgiven after one good season. Like there was some epic fail in those first 6 years. And to be honest, if he didn't have the connection to the program, which was, being a quarterback at Michigan, having the track record, they probably would have fired him after the COVID year. I mean, that year was a disaster. They found a way to turn it around. But I think he will do a fine job in Minnesota because he's a fine head coach. But I think that we're in a weird, awkward position right now where if he comes back, I tweeted that it would be the equivalent of like when Michael Scott came back from New York after insisting that like he was going to take Jan's job. Because I think that Michigan fans in general are very upset, and rightfully so. You win the Big Ten, awesome.
Yep.
You beat Ohio State, more awesome. You get to the playoff. Yes, Georgia blew your doors off, but like Georgia was, I mean, they're just on another level, man. That's another.
Welcome
Am I back?
Welcome back.
Sorry, yeah. No, but Georgia was on another level. I mean, that's the upper tier, the upper echelon. And now a month has passed, an important recruiting period. He's interviewing for an NFL job on signing day. Like, I don't think that that's a really good look. So if he comes back at this point, the momentum that they will have had following what was, a remarkable year last year is kind of died down. So, like, I wrote a relatively scathing piece on Barstool today that I'm sure people are going to take the wrong way. I actually like Jim Harbaugh, and I think that Jim Harbaugh, as a human being, much of the criticism lobbed his way is a little bit unfair. I think he's grown a lot as a person. I think he's grown a lot as a father. I met him once. I mean, I'm sure he doesn't remember, but it was about 5 years ago. Very kind, loves Michigan. I have no qualms necessarily about the character of Jim Harbaugh, but football and sports are a business, the same way that podcasting is a business and the same way that writing is a business. And I think that if he leaves now, a majority of people will view his exit and thus his tenure as a whole as a bit of a disappointment. But I'll contend to the end. I believe that Jim Harbaugh is a very good football coach, and I think he will do an excellent job in Minnesota, especially when you look at the outlook of that division with Rodgers leaving, potentially. I mean, probably. They'll probably be the favorites to win the North next year. I mean, the Bears are rebuilding. The Lions are the Lions. And then the Packers, are in a very tough spot with their cap space and a very tough spot without Rodgers. So it's an appealing job. They have some built-in solid skill position players. I mean, Kirk Cousins isn't amazing, but, Jordan Jefferson's an excellent receiver. And they still have, some good running backs. So I think that he'll be solid if he goes there. But there is some legitimate frustration regarding where the Harbaugh currently stands in the Michigan program. I think a lot of people are disappointed, and they should be.
It moves so fast. It felt like, it was just last week where it was a rumor, and this week he's coming, and it's done last night. It's like, what happened here? It just moved very, very quickly. But Vikings fans are fired up, and I admittedly don't know a whole lot about him. I remember the Super Bowl when the power went out. When he was coaching the 49ers. But other than that, don't know a ton about him or his scheme. I know he's an interesting dude. I watched an interview. I think it was right after Michigan won the Big Ten. And I was watching him. He's an interesting guy, and him and Kirk Cousins will be interesting together.
Yes.
That's the pairing.
Even beyond, I mean, it'd be an interesting pairing, but even beyond that, we're talking about a Michigan guy mentoring a Michigan State quarterback. So I mean, there's the other added element to that. So that would definitely be fun. But I'm up to this point a little bit disappointed by the lack of traction.
I would be
it's
too.
Been a month. It's been a month following what was a remarkable season, and it just seems like we've been stuck in the mud for the last month. And at this point, I'd be totally fine if he went.
Lockout's still going on, Chris. We're frustrated. People are pissed. Doesn't feel like it's coming to an end anytime soon. But if it does, what's your sense on Mr. Correa? Because there were some rumblings that even after Javier Baez signs with the Tigers, that they could move him to second and sign Carlos Correa to play short. What do you think? Chris, if that happened, that lineup, you could deal with the lumps of a young pitching staff at that point.
If that happened, then the take of could the Tigers win the Central? The odds.
2022. It's 2022.
Right in this year. And I know a lot of Tigers fans have tweeted about it. Let me just put an end to this. Carlos Correa will not be a Tiger. Carlos Correa is not going to be a Tiger. He will sign. I don't know. Angels stand out. I'd kind of lose respect for him if he did that, because I feel like that's, go ahead and win 77 games a year and see what happens. That's kind of, they're in that perpetual mediocrity. But no, look, it was one of those things that Detroit sports fans, and by the way, I was not just, on this bandwagon. I was at the front of the train. I mean, I was
Yeah.
leading this charge.
From last year, you were doing like a year ago when Hinch
Oh,
got
yeah.
there.
No, I mean, yeah, for sure. For sure. I was on that bandwagon of let's get him here. Now, of course, the big reason for that, the Hinch connection. AJ Hinch managed Correa. Correa loves Hinch. And there were rumblings. I do believe the Tigers reached out. In fact, I think Evan Petzold, the Detroit Free Press, reported the Tigers did offer him a contract in the 200s for, I believe, it was a shorter deal than he probably would have wanted, but the AAV was pretty high. Given the current status, ownership, management, he was not going to come here. There were a lot of talks about it. Now, the thing is, and I've fallen into this trap many times as well. Sometimes Detroit sports fans and fans in general, it's not a Detroit thing, when they don't get their guy, doesn't mean that they didn't get a guy. Like,
Right.
this team has played with since, and this guy wasn't even like amazing, but since Jose Iglesias left, has played with well below replacement level shortstops for several years. I mean, we're talking, it was a bad string, dude. I mean, Zach Short, Dowell Lugo, Jordy Mercer, Nico Goodrum.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, elite Nico was probably the best of them. And even
Yeah.
he's had like a 600 something OPS his last 2 years. So regardless of how, the potential fall off of Javi Baez, which I think is valid, the strikeout rate is very dangerous, but him and Tim Anderson are the two unicorns of baseball where they kind of go against what modern analytics preach, which is take pitches, get on base, draw walks. These are guys who, I mean, never walk. They strike out all the time. They chase all the time. And yet their bat to ball skills are so good and their contact rate is good to a point where, they will add a lot to a team. I mean, Javi Baez, take out the COVID year for a second. But you look at his career, we're talking about a guy who on his worst day, post 2016 is a 3-WAR player. Well, that's the equivalent of 3 more wins. So I'm okay with that. Is it amazing? Would I have broken the bank for Carlos Correa? If it was my money, yes, because there's no salary cap and I want to win games. But I also do understand the business approach to that, where if we get one Correa, we're not going to be able to get in Eduardo Rodriguez. We're not going to bring in a solid backup catcher, solid starting catcher in Tucker Barnhart. I mean, I think that they've done a good job of kind of allocating their assets up to this point now. And obviously the lockout throws a wrench into stuff. If this is it, then no, that's a disappointment. Like, you got to at least make one more signing. Chris Ilitch is one of the richest owners in all of sports. You got to make your move. But thus far, despite, the rumblings about Correa, I do believe there's one more signing in them, but I've been generally like pretty pleased with the direction this offseason has gone for the Tigers.
You have Jonathan Scope, Twins legend. Love Jonathan Scope. Eric Haas, Torkelson's a righty, correct? Green's a righty too, isn't he? Or is Green lefty?
Green is lefty. Green is left-handed.
Yeah, so you got Tork coming, you got Haas, you got Scope, you got Baez. I could see one of those platoon outfielders, Jock Peterson, Schwarber, Eddie Rosario. One of those three agents would be a good match for Detroit.
It's possible. I believe, and Hinch has alluded to this, I actually think they're happy with the current outfield outlook. You have Robbie Grossman coming back, who had a career year last year, who, again, plays like every day, which is, again, knock on wood, you hope he stays healthy, is, again, kind of a unicorn where when you look at, like, the top 5 guys who draw the most walks in baseball, it's like Aaron Judge, Joey Gallo, Freddie Freeman. Then for some reason, Robbie Grossman is on that list, which is kind of bizarre. But I think, and Riley Green will be here next year. I think that in general, they're happy between Badu and Victor Reyes and Derek Hill. I think AJ Hinch believes that those are 3 platoon guys that on any given day, given the matchups, you can plug into a lineup and have them succeed. They're not everyday guys. But yeah, I mean, look, if it was up to me, I would probably be willing to spend more money on an outfielder. My guess is they're going to want another starter because, Matt Boyd is no longer a part of the organization. He would have missed a majority of the year anyway. We know what happened with Spencer Turnbull, Tommy John. He'll be out all year. You look at Mize Manning and Skubal, and while I believe all 3 of them, pending health, will be excellent pitchers, they're also young. And while their innings may not be monitored, they will be, I think there will be short leashes at point. I don't see any of them pitching more than 150 innings this year. They're in their second year. I mean, and Manning is really in his first full year. I think what they're going to look for in free agency after the lockout is a starter who can provide those innings that Mize, Manning, and Scooball may not be able to provide. Now, Eduardo Rodriguez could be that guy, though he's had some injury problems. A guy I've honed in on, who I've been, kind of thinking about, is Zach Grinky, who,
Yeah.
I know he's 38, but he pitched, I believe, 170 something innings last year, which I think would have led the Tigers staff had he have been in Detroit. We're talking about a pitcher's park and, for the most part, a pitcher's division in the American League Central. He's, over the last several years, he's kind of got this Greg Maddux thing going on where he's throwing 88 mile per hour fastballs, but he's getting fly balls, he's getting ground outs. Would be a tremendous mentor for these young pitchers.
Yeah.
That to me is a guy that I would lean towards. I think that in terms of position players, they're probably out. We'll see, but I would guess their next move would be one more starter.
Grinky is interesting. You just feel like even if he's lost velocity, even if he was bad down the stretch, you just know he's going to get outs. You know what I mean? He's going to find a way. He's just going to find a way.
He's well past his prime, but he's still very much a capable, serviceable pitcher. And if you sign him, it would be a 1-year deal anyway, so it would be very low risk, high reward.
Chris, what would a successful season look like for these Tigers in 2022? I think you always have a good gauge on this, because last year I agreed. Yes, I agree. Last year, complete success, right?
Yeah.
Totally agree. What does that look like this year?
It's weird because, like, Detroit Tigers baseball and baseball seasons in general are not like college football. Like, to me, Michigan football, it's like, you win the Big Ten, you win 11 games, that's a success. If you don't, well, then you're coming up short. When we're talking about a rebuild, I mean, to me, especially, dude, I was having a conversation with multiple people after April, where I said, man, I think this thing is about to completely go full Hindenburg, where I think that they're going to lose 110 games.
Yeah.
I think Avila is going to resign. I think just out of disgrace, really. And we could have a situation where AJ Hinch just sees the writing on the wall and just I know he's under contract, but tries to find another job, just because this thing, we're going to go through rebuild number 2. And they played at an 85 win pace the last 4 months of the season. And that was, I call it a success. This year, look, to me, my heart says playoffs or bust. Assuming whether there's an expanded postseason or not. In my head, I say, I want to look at the standings at the end of the year and see a team that is within 5 games or less of that last wild card spot. Yeah. Now, maybe that means a really bad April again, and then you find your way back. Maybe that means a hot start and then you lose it in August. But what I want more than anything is I want competitive, meaningful baseball in August. And hopefully even into September, because there are admittedly still a lot of holes in this team. Will the bullpen hold up the way it did last year? You even saw some cracks in the foundation late last season with Cisnero kind of falling apart, and Funkhauser wasn't great in September. Will these pitchers take the next step? Will Torkelson and Green have like a Chris Bryant type of impact where they just step in right away in their money? We don't know. But what, to me, anything less than an improvement over last year's win total would be a failure. I think that they're very much capable. I think they're a better team than they were last year. And regardless of what people are going to say about Avila and about Illich, and I've said more than almost anybody, this was a 77-win team, and your number one goal going into every offseason is, how do we make this team better? Well, they have. They've made this team. Now, a million different things can happen with injuries and such, but like I almost, a team that I would compare this to, and I really hope I'm right about this, is the Indians, or now Guardians, in 2015, where they had this year. It was after Kluber won the Cy Young, and everyone had these huge expectations, and they got off to a pitiful start.
Yeah.
And I think even going into that season, I think Tom Verducci had them in the World Series, and they had like an awful April and even awful May. And at the end of that year, they were like 4 or 5 games out of a playoff spot. The next year, they went to the World Series. I think because those young guys like Lindor and Ramirez finally late in that season started to come into their own. I think we could have a similar arc here where you have some really good young starters, some very young position players who may not show it until late in the year. I think that playoffs would be the ultimate goal, obviously, but I think this will be a team that will hover around that 80+ win mark and will play some competitive baseball late in the season. And as much as I would love to see them, make a run in the postseason, I think that's a reasonable goal in my opinion.
Tigers Royals will be fascinating to watch. I just think this division is going to be interesting. The Central is going to be interesting, I think, in the next, not just in 2022, but again in the next 3 to 5 years, because I think the Royals have had a lot of top 5 picks as well. They should be moving along now too, and I think they are with Bobby Witt Jr. and they got some other guys and some pitchers. Asa Lacy had a tough year, but I think they're coming too. So this division is going to be interesting. Chris, can't wait for the post games. Hopefully, let's get it going, man.
Hopefully we get them in April, man. I'm trying to hold out hope. I'm trying to.
I'm just disgusted. I'm disgusted by it. I don't even discuss it.
You know what's so frustrating? I put this in my blog the other day. Is like if you ask any player, coach, or media member, they all feel the same way we do. And it's just so unfortunate that the only people who don't share the disgust that guys like me and you share are the people who are negotiating. I mean, it's changed the game and it makes things very frustrating. But, still just got to keep the fingers crossed. I'll say this. I know for a fact, and I think you can probably attest to this, there will be baseball this year.
Yes.
They're not. I mean, they're stupid. They are not stupid enough to not play a season. We will have one. But I mean, you'd prefer it be opening the regular opening day, because I put this in my blog the other day. We have not had a proper opening day since 2019. I mean, 2020 was July last year, limited capacity, and then who knows what's going to happen this year? That's a really difficult indictment if they're not able to get things done. But nothing else to do but keep holding out hope.
Yep, I remember when we mentioned right after everything kind of broke. Never did I think it would be a 60-game season, but I hope we're heading for a better outcome here with the lockout. Chris, thank you so much. You're the man.
Yeah, you too, buddy. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
We'll get back on at Castellani 2014 on Twitter. One of the best follows you can make. So go out and do that. Chris, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man.